Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. So today I have another experiment using vinegar. A couple of weeks ago we dissolved an eggshell using vinegar and the shell or the egg turned squishy. So today we're going to use vinegar to actually clean something. And we've talked about vinegar being acidic, and we've talked a little bit about it being used as a cleaning product. So today we're actually going to clean some things using vinegar. Now, I'm not going to ask you to clean my apartment, although it is a little messy in here at the moment, but instead we are going to clean pennies. So if you've ever seen an old penny, you've probably seen that it gets kind of gross when it gets old. So we're going to see if we can get that grossness off and make it shine again. All right, so what do we need for this one? Well, we need a container, of course. So I have this one with nice flat sides so I can see right into it. I like this one for today, so I want to watch what's going on. We will need vinegar, of course. We will need salt. And we will need a toothbrush. Now, you don't want to use the toothbrush that you use twice a day, because we are going to be cleaning with this one and not cleaning teeth. We're going to be cleaning pennies. So you don't want to mix your teeth with the pennies. So if your parents have an old toothbrush, or if you have an old toothbrush that you use for cleaning around the house, that'll work great. If you don't have a toothbrush, you could use maybe something like a sponge, like the scratchy side of a sponge, just something that you can really scrub with a little bit. And then if you have these, you can find a 1/4 cup and you can find a 1 teaspoon. All right, and lastly, of course, you will need pennies so we can clean them. So before you pause the video to go look for pennies, you want to look for pennies that are a little bit old. And so in this case, we want pennies that are from before 1982. So 1982 or earlier. And that's because pennies from before 1982 had more copper in them. And copper is what makes them get dirty and gross looking. In 1982, the folks that make the pennies decided that copper was getting a little too valuable, and so they wanted to use a cheaper metal, so they used zinc, or they used more zinc in the pennies going forward. So the pennies from before 1982 have more copper in them, so they hopefully will have a better reaction when we try to clean them. So if you can find a variety of pennies, that'd be even better. So go ahead and pause the video now and see what you can come up with. All right, so before we get started, I just wanted to show you what pennies I am using. Since we're doing a science experiment, we want to know where we're starting from so that we can see what changes after we do the experiment. So I found this one from 1961. You can see it's actually quite shiny already, but that's the oldest one I could find. So we're just going to try to make it even more shiny. This one is from 1973, not shiny at all. This one's actually from 1982, that year where they switched. So I think it has less copper, but we will see if we can find out. This one is from 1991, very not shiny. And then this one is from 2013. So I have a nice range there for our experiment and our results. And I hope you've found a nice range as well. And then just because I'm curious, I have a few more coins. They're mostly shiny already, but not perfectly shiny. And I'm just kind of curious what will happen with them. So I'm gonna experiment with those as well. All right, so I hope you have found some coins that you will enjoy experimenting with, and let's get to it. All right, so grab your jar. We are going to fill it with 1/4 cup of vinegar. And if you don't have these measuring cups, I didn't pour that very well. Oh well. If you don't have these measuring cups, it's going to be about that much. So not a lot, but not just a little. And then we are going to use 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay. Then we're going to stir it, make sure it's all nice and mixed. Takes a little while to mix, but make sure You mix it as much as possible. So maybe something like that. Pretty cloudy, but that's okay. And then we are just going to place our coins in there and give it a few minutes. So I'm going to make sure they're all covered, all submerged, and we're going to watch what happens. All right, how are your pennies doing? What do you notice so far? Well, in mine, I notice there are bubbles on a lot of the surfaces, especially on the pennies. Maybe not so much on the nickels and dimes, although a little bit there too. And there are also bubbles coming off of them, so they're not just sitting there on the pennies, but some of the bubbles are actually rising off of the pennies. And so that's a little bit similar to that egg that we dissolved the shell off of with the vinegar. So as we talked about then, those bubbles are a sign that some kind of chemical reaction is happening. All right, so now we are going to scrub these guys and see what happens. So you can just reach in there, grab your pennies. And then give them a good scrub with your toothbrush or your sponge or whatever you have. All right, and when you have scrubbed your pennies to your satisfaction, then you can take them over to the sink and rinse them off. All right, so go ahead and do that, pause the video, and I'll see you back here in a sec. Okay, how do we do? So if I were to tell you about my pennies, and I'll show you my pennies in a moment, they are definitely more shiny. They're not perfectly shiny, but I bet if we had left it in longer, or if I had left it in longer, maybe you did leave it in longer, but I bet if you left it in longer, they would have been even more shiny on the way out. So here's mine. So here's the 1961. It is very shiny now, even more than before. Here is the 1973. That one was totally dark, and it is quite shiny now. Doesn't quite look like it there, but it is. Here is the 1982. Also, it was pretty dark before. Pretty shiny now, comparatively. Here is the 1991. And here is the 2013. So definitely improvement on all of them. And again, I bet if I had left it in longer, they would have gotten even more clean. Didn't see a whole lot of change in these coins, but I didn't really think we would, so that's okay. I was just curious. Okay, so we saw firsthand that vinegar cleans things pretty well. There's a part 2 of this experiment, and that is making these pennies kind of old looking again. All right, so for this part, we're going to need another container. So I have this one left. Most of my containers are being used for our other experiments at this point. But this one will work. It's plastic, but that's okay. You want a container with a lid, though. You also need a paper towel. So I have a paper towel here. And all I'm going to do is dip my paper towel in the salt and vinegar solution that we made. So it's damp. We don't want it to be too wet. So I'm going to squeeze it out a little bit. Then I'm just going to put this at the bottom of this second container. And now I'm going to take the pennies. So this is what we have so far. Now I'm going to take the pennies. They're nice and shiny. And I'm just going to lay them in there. And make sure they are touching the paper towel there. So there's what I have in there. They're all kind of in there snug. And then I'm going to put the lid on. So we want to make sure the lid is on so that the towel stays damp. All right, so we are going to leave this for a couple of days, and we will check in with it later in the week and see what happens. So think about what happens when you leave something metal outside. Does it change? Does it stay the same? Does it stay the same as always, or does it change? So, you know, like railroad tracks, or maybe you forgot about your bike and you left it outside for a couple days in the rain. What happens? All right? So we're going to see what happens to these pennies and see if we can think about how that's the same. All right, until next time, stay safe. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comments below, and I will see you again soon. Bye, everybody.